It's been a remarkable learning, and I hope that there will be many more like this. And this is the 6th one. And to put together these kind of webinars really takes a lot of effort, a lot of commitment, conversations that Atya has been having with the conversations that Atya has been having with the principals across the country. So it's been a remarkable time that what's been going on. So thank you very much for all that.
Your voice is cracking.
I'm afraid that if it's an audio, I'm afraid, can you hear me, Atya? Can you hear me now? Am I audible? The voice is cracking, then without much ado, can you hear me? There may be some kind of a bandwidth problem. Can you hear me, Atya?
I can hear you, ma'am, but there is
Can you hear me? The rest can hear me. Perhaps she can't hear me. Am I audible to everybody?
Yes, you are. Yes, ma'am, you're very much audible.
Thank you very much. So I would like to begin by saying that, we are in a kind of a pedagogical industrial revolution, which is actually a movement from revolution 3.0 to 4.0. In 3.0, the computers had come in and there was job opportunities, and we had really started looking slowly at computers. But now with 4.0, all the gadgets and the devices that have come in, and we're trying to grapple with them is what has become an integral part, because of the pandemic, of our teaching. Now we have to humanize this learning experience, because right now everything is very much online, it's very technological, and the writing is on the wall that it's going to be like this, not only now, but for a very, very long time. And perhaps learning is going to carry on in that same manner. So we have to really look at education 5.0. So how do we look at humanizing this particular concept of online learning? We have to humanize it for our children. Otherwise, you and I are no better than coaching centers. And as it is, the rest of India is in a difficult situation because they haven't even reached education 2.0. Because we do not have digital highways. We do not have access to this kind of equipment. And we cannot keep thinking that we're going to go back in a very normal manner to schools of brick and mortar, because we're not. So even the smallest city, the smallest town, the rural village will have to find ways and means of teaching their children. So I think this is very, very essential that we try to find web technologies that are going to help us to transact with learning. In so many meetings now and the conversations that we're having, CBSE is very categorically saying that the learning systems are going to be hybrid. And we have to look at this, because if we're not going to function in that manner, we're going to leave a lot of our children behind, and they're going to fall into an abyss of lack of learning. So the first topic today is a very interesting topic. It's about the flip side of diversity. And before I introduce to you the panelist, the wonderful principal who's going to speak on this, I would like to inform you that, she's talking about diversity. In my understanding, India was the classroom, and it was very diverse. It had the rich, it had the poor, it has the disabled, it had the underprivileged. But today, I think because of digitalization, what I see around me is it's become a classroom for the privileged, because we have completely marginalized children with disabilities. We do not have access for children who are poor, and there is a certain mediocrity amongst middle level. For example, even when you and I talk, you will see that my voice is cracking. You will find that my face will disappear, or one of our speakers will find it difficult to get in. So we have a huge problem as far as these issues are concerned. So when we do come back to learning, whether we come back to bricks and mortar, whether we come back to any kind of learning, and some of you are already in that learning, you have a situation because you have to grapple with at least 3 or 4 levels of learning in the classroom. And how are you going to do that? Because it's very, very clear now that people say that about 9.6 million children have access to online, but 250 million children do not. And other than that, there was the latest UNESCO report that I read, where they have mentioned that in the next 6 months, if something is not being done in a radical manner, millions of our children will be thrown back into poverty. And they will not only have no learning, they will have no access to homes, to food, and so on. So we keep talking about the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, but we are not going to be helping them, because goal 1, goal 4, and goal 7, which is zero hunger, no poverty, and access to learning is not there. So Governments are working very hard in trying to grapple with this. But as principals, we have to grapple with this also, because we are responsible to the communities who are in our schools. We cannot ignore them because they're disabled and we don't have any other choice. We cannot ignore them if they're poor and we have no other choice. So I think it is very, very essential today that we look at it, because life is not only about bandwidths and devices, it's about humanity. And so with that, I would like to introduce to you a marvelous person, Dr. Sharda Chandrasekharan, principal of the Whitefield Global School, Bengaluru, to initiate this discussion. Sharda ji is an old friend and has been very, very involved with education. She's a highly intelligent and a compassionate educator who understands children, who understands learning, and is an integral part of her Sahodya. So with that, I leave you to the ideas of Dr. Sharda Chandrasekharan. Sharda ji, please. Over
Thank
to
you very much, Amita ma'am, and thank you, Ratna Sagar. Good evening to all. I love to tell stories. I think I'm audible. If I'm audible, I go to you on.
Louder,
Am I?
maybe. Little louder.
Okay, can you hear me?
Could everybody turn off their audios, please? Could everybody mute their audios?
Yeah. Am I audible?
Absolutely audible.
Okay, thank you so much. So,
Sharda ji, could you unmute yourself? Could you unmute yourself?
long ago, eons ago, there was the whole universe is getting created. All the planets were created, and they were all there. And God was asking each planet, "How do you want to be?" So each planet gave what they want to be. But here is a blue planet which said that I want to be full of life and liveliness. So God smiled and said, I believe, life and liveliness, do you know what you are asking for? Then this planet said, yes, I know what I'm asking for. So he said, okay, you'll be called Earth and you have got both. And again, eons passed and this Earth went back to the God and said, I believe, I'm finding it very difficult because the liveliness is creating a lot of problem to me. If I give water, the land animals are crying. If I give any more of the land, the water animals are creating ruckus, and everybody wants their space, and the weight on me is becoming more and more. I'm not able to carry it. Then the God smiled and said, I believe, you are the mother, you should know to balance it. Then she said, how will I balance it? You are the one who created, so you balance it. You should know how to do it. So Earth came back. Really, I read this story almost some 25 years ago, thinking how will it balance? Then it understood that it has to create interdependence. And the moment the interdependence was created, the survival of the fittest also came into existence. The interdependence also created the food cycles. Interdependence created the whole lot of diversity, and everybody started living in their own habitat, but they also started looking at each other's habitat. That's how the diversity has come into this earth, and India is the greatest example of the diversity. As long as the physical classes are concerned, we all know that the whole lot of school community actually caters to the heterogeneity. And we were very happy with the heterogeneity. We were doing a fantastic job with the heterogeneity. As Amita ma'am said that, whether it is actually the special children to the child who is a reluctant learner or the child who is a gifted, everybody was attended to. Came the pandemic. The pandemic has hit us very badly. Today we all came to a lifeless screen, and we are teaching through the lifeless screen to 30 to 50 to 60 lively children who are again seeing the lifeless screen. The diversity here is not only the hunger, it is not only the not having food or house or shelter, it is also not able to touch, not able to pinch, not able to nudge, and not able to be nudged. The diversity is also that if I am not alert, that my teacher is not able to know. So the teachers have a major challenge. The schools have a major challenge here. How am I going to take care of this special child, this reluctant learner, this child who doesn't have any device at home, and this child who answers before even I question, and this child who has so many gadgets that before anything comes, already the information is there. The heterogeneity and diversity is this. Today, this has become the biggest challenge, and this is the flip side of the whole learning. How are you and me going to solve this problem? How are we, you and me together, make the learning happen so that we will become a progressive country, not a country which is looking back to 2.0, as Amita ma'am said. We have to go to 5.0. And so many, we are only 20% of the people who may be getting all this kind of gadgets. There are 80% who are not getting. What about the people who are living in all those villages who do not have? So for that, what I want to say is, let us start with the classroom who has. And in that, what is the requirement of a child who is a reluctant learner? How am I going to attend to that child? Because he wants to learn, but he wants to be nudged, but not so blatantly that his parent knows that he is getting nudged. Yeah. Now, for the child, the parent who doesn't know what happens in the class is knowing right next to him, the parent is seated to see how is the class happening. What is the participation of this child? So the child cannot tell the parent, no, 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 I was participative. Okay, so this is one diversity, the problem the child is having, that I am being observed. So how is the teacher going to take that away? How is the teacher going to make the whole class happen? I'll just tell you one example which we follow in the class. What we do is that I tell all my teachers, we have a heterogeneity. We have a child who is answering through a mobile. We have a child who has a laptop. We have a child who is using only a tab. And we may have a child who is sharing with somebody, so he may be missing the class. So first thing is, if you know the first, as my sister used to say, that call it as red zone, yellow zone, and green zone. The red zone is the active learner, and the yellow zone is the one who is a mediocre child, whereas the green zone is the one where I need to concentrate on. In my group of children, I will always keep my eye on the green zone. In this green zone, I have children who may not answer. So first I will ask them the question, and I will be very personal with them. And I will also send a private message to them. Beta, if you have any questions, you can please shoot it to me in my private text. So I will be answering. There is an assurance going on. And the red zone ones, I have to give a challenging questions. They will be ready to answer. My mediocre children are very happily participating. This is the diversity within the class of haves. What will I do if I have, there are 5 to 10% of the children who do not have any of these gadgets, or who may have only one laptop for 2 children? Then we also have a recorded ones which we can tell the child, you can attend and call me personally in my chat box. I will be answering your question. But what if the child is locked up in some village where there is no internet, or where there is only a mobile available with one WhatsApp? Then, thanks to Mr. M. Pant, he started this actually WhatsApp learning. In fact, that is his babies. We are all trained on how to use WhatsApp as a learning mode. So we can use the WhatsApp as a learning mode. I don't have mobile. I don't even have a TV. Then I should be using the radio as a channel, but this doesn't become an interactive one, because the parent is also not very well educated. Then how are we going to reach out to that child? Here I'll tell you one classic example of gones. I'm not talking about today. I'm talking about some 30, 40 years ago. A very close friend of mine has taught these gones. Now here there is no social distancing, because they have only liquor collection and liquor brewing as their main occupation. So in the morning, they'll be on those palm trees. And this lady was given a cycle. She will go from palm tree to palm tree. She will teach individually to each of them. 2 years she worked like this, and there were actually gold medalists from that particular zone at that particular 10th standard board. So,
Dr. Sharda, I'm so sorry to, Dr. Sharda, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I'm so sorry to come in. Just that, would you give me your last, would you just do your little roundup now?
I'm concluding now. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah. So what I am saying is that please look into this requirement, work for the need of the hour, and Then we will look into the want. Need of the hour is the education and learning must go on. And as per the want, then we need to actually diversify. Diversification, when I said it is a flip side, it is a flip side today because we are not able to attend to many of them. Thank you for listening to me patiently. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. And I like the way that with the examples and the stories, you brought out the whole idea of reaching out to people, and the way that you're reaching out to the student community, and the fact that you're addressing each one's need. And I think that's what is so important today, because in this whole cyber space where we sometimes can't even get to see the children who we are dealing with, we have to embed social and emotional learning so that we are able to make these heart-to-heart connects with the children. And I think that's so essential. And that came out so beautifully in your talk. Thank you very much for that wonderful deliberation that you gave, Dr. Sharda. I knew that I never expected any less from that. Thank you so much for that. With that, I would now be requesting another very dear friend of mine, Ms. Sunita Rao, who will be speaking shortly on developing new teaching modules. Just before she speaks, I'm thinking about 6 very important points that we need to really focus on, because there are going to be new teaching modules that we have to look at, because competency-based education is going to be coming towards you through the circulars that the CBSE is soon going to give, because everything is going to change. The way that we assess is going to change. And in any case, from nursery to grade 8, you are very much on your own to sit with your faculties and to work out different kinds of means of learning. And so I think the most important thing is, one, that children should know anything and not just only something. So I'm not saying that micro credentials are not important. They are. It's important to be specialized. But it is also important to be focused. Sorry. It's important to be focused, because I think it is the purpose of learning that, because the careers are going to offer us many types of openings, and children should have the accessibility not only for working in a silo, but in many openings. The other thing is that we have to update ourselves in the whole idea of STEM learning and make it STEAM. So not only science, technology, engineering, and maths, but arts has to come in, because with art comes in imagination. There comes in empathy, what Dr. Sharda was talking about. It comes in compassion, what she was talking about. And that is the need for the art, especially because technology is taking over our lives. We also have to develop potential and create social integration amongst people. How do we have to do it in this online world is something that we have to work for and understand. Because competition may bring us success, but it is collaboration that will bring us livelihood. And I think that's very, very essential to who we are. We have to keep looking at the whole model of what Alvin Toffler spoke in the 70s in Future Shock, when he said that we must look at lifelong learning. And this is something which has been proved, because you and I today are involved with that. Whatever age we are, if we are in the field of learning, we have to keep learning and upgrading our skills. Otherwise, we will become irrelevant to the system, and we will have to move away, and we'll become dinosaurs. So as long as we're alive and we want to be relevant to the world and to society, we'll have to keep learning. So upgrading the skills is a very important aspect. And I'm sure that all these different ideas that are coming up, the different points that I've made out. So whether it is about teacher training and how teachers now have to not only look at dispensing information, but they have to look at keeping the child at the heart. And the child is the one who finds his own knowledge. So a teacher merely guides him. And this is the actual thing that the teacher has to do today. So in that, with all these models in front of us, how are we going to look at learning? And I'm sure here, my old friend, Sunita Rao, my old young friend, because she's young. So my young friend, Ms. Sunita Rao, principal of Delhi Public School, Hyderabad, a highly regarded educator for several decades. Someone who is also, her essential part of her Sahodya group. Someone who's highly sensitized towards children. And I've heard her, and I know of the kind of passion that she has for education and for dispensing learning towards children. So now I request my friend Sunita to take on developing new teaching models. Sunita, please.
Ma'am, DPS Secunderabad.
I beg your pardon. DPS, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, Sunita. Please forgive me.
That's fine.
So it is
Thank you,
DPS,
Dr.
it is
Amita ji.
DPS Secunderabad. Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Amita ji, and thank you, Ms. Atia from Ratnasagar and the whole team and my esteemed panel members. It's great being here on this webinar. In today's world, during the COVID times and the kind of challenge that we are all facing, basically the whole visualization of school has been one of a physical environment where we actually interact, we touch, we feel, and we work with adults and children together with all the required tools there at just a table away or so, and the teacher is in a familiar environment of one's own teaching space, and the children are also in a familiar environment. But then and during these times in school, in a physical school, we've had as a teacher, we would have had loads of flexibility in planning, flexibility in time management and so on. But then now during the COVID times, when we forcibly and essentially all schools have moved to the technology driven classroom and the online teaching concept, in spite of the main learner objectives in terms of the content being the same, retained the same, the process and the product have a different dimension now. And this has actually led to a lot of research and a lot of deliberations, discussions around both at the level of management and at the level of the teacher in order to roll out models that would successfully engage the learner and very importantly, engage them age appropriate. Also a lot of efforts towards studying the best practices the world over that's offering, customizing it to the Indian context, and then trying to give different options wherein the teacher has enough up their sleeve to be able to handle an active classroom online. The whole planning and readiness was driven, as Dr. Amita ji was very aptly sharing with us, was driven by a few prerequisites. The conceptual understanding and learning, one had to be aware of the fact that when you move from the physical environment to an online platform, this is one challenge that a teacher faces. And what is the percentage of learner engagement? Are we really driving a learner-centric classroom or not? And how are we sustaining the learner's interest? That's a huge challenge that all of us face. And are we communicating effectively, better than what we probably did in a classroom? Are we using and are we skilled enough to use the smart tools that we have moved to from the physical resources? What is the attention span of a child in a classroom situation? Probably a class 5 teacher could have engaged the child at least for a span of 15 minutes, although the actual attention span might be lesser than that because of the physical environment. But then now that is a big challenge. And also the concern over the screen time, the concern over the lack of resources that the teacher or the student would like to have handy to be able to successfully engage in a learning environment. So at this point, I must share that a lot of discussions in our school that happened, we were looking at choices, varied choices, whether we share just a PPT with the children or Word documents where the children read on their own. And then slowly we graduated to a recorded voiceover teaching video. And then there came the complexity of, have we done enough? Is the child really engaged? So we moved to a model which is a live teaching model, and a live teaching model that had to replicate to a large extent the school environment. That means a whiteboard, the teacher moving from the technological tools on the laptop or the desktop to a whiteboard, to sufficiently trying to engage the learner in many ways that they are more familiar with. That took a lot of efforts from school, and therefore many different models emerged through this. And let me just share a few examples of the efforts and the kind of focus that we are driving at different age groups at the pre-primary and the junior school, knowing the attention span of the children, we are engaging them just for an hour and a half, and that too, knowing that at those levels children are not independent and they are parent driven, they need the support of the parents. So we try to make sure that the program is well planned on one hand, but we are not we're also careful about what we are achieving through this learning time scheduled for the children. We had to be also careful about the fact that we were using the learning space in a home environment rather than in a school, which is not in our control, and the learning experiences that we wanted to drive at. So very carefully, we started planning concept learning through games, color-based games, food art activities, learning through art. We also kind of made it possible for children that we don't have fixed ideas or fixed expectations. If there is a plan A, there's a plan B. If we are talking to the child that you have to color with the color green, crayon green, we also allowed for a child who does not have a green crayon at home to color with another color, and so on. We had to be very careful about what is the model expecting from the child, value-based learning, thematic learning, and as Ms. Dr. Amita ji rightly said, a careful effort towards social learning, trying to bring in the social concept, a 5-minute interaction mode where the children could say hi to each other, at least if they are unable to relate to each other by name, trying to bring in a virtual circle time to replace the school circle time, learning through sensory activities, loads of it, I must say, using using paper cups at home or spoons or whatever, and definitely using puppets from the teacher's side, and using whatever the child has at home in terms of toys, and trying to replace kinesthetic learning experiences that would happen in probably the Montessori lab in school. And as we graduate to handling primary and upper primary, we try to plan for loads of distractors. Like in the preschool and 1 and 2, every 5 minutes we ensured a kinesthetic activity. The child perforce had to stand and do an action or follow the music, join a story telling through music or whatever. So that's the way we kind of re-engage them back into their attention span and ensure that the child doesn't run away from the mom's lap or dad's lap. And in terms of primary school, we also realized that we couldn't run a 40-minute class just like that. The model had to ensure for attracting the child, keeping the interest levels high, and therefore for every 10 minutes the teaching is happening using a video mode or PowerPoint or the physical board. But there were distractors, there were fillers, there were TED Talks, there were fitness activities that the children could do with family. And the whole point here was we were driving at the blended learning style and careful, I should say, approach towards DI. Differentiated instruction is not that easy when you do an online mode, because you probably don't roll out that many tasks for different varied learner groups in the class, both the dependent and the independent. But there have been a subtle effort towards this, I must say, in terms of setting expectations to children. The MI integrated tasks were also well planned, and we've been a little high on using theater in education and using mnemonics in the classroom. I feel all this kind of brings in experiences to the child that would help them at least focus on the learning that is planned for the day, and also still feel that it's not a passive platform where only the teacher is talking. So in between, we were putting up slides for a quick check on their understanding, where there's an MCQ and they have to answer it on the chat box, or they're unmuted and they get to answer. So this is a section concept being run, and therefore that helps that the teacher knows her 30 odd children in the classroom and speaks to them by name, and draws their...
Dr. Sunita,
Yes.
I'm so sorry.
Yes.
Would you just make your concluding
Shall I
remarks?
wind up? Yes.
Please. Thank
So
you.
to conclude, I must say that in terms of the model that we use, first of all, it should be age appropriate, knowing the learner needs. And secondly, I think the show must go on. So I don't think anything should stop us using 3D modeling or using virtual experiential programs or surveys, using discussion forums, peer learning opportunities that can be brought in, integrate wellness talks and so on, and bring in the children to the forefront where they could lead the learning on certain days and not just the teacher. There's a host of platforms and models that we could also touch upon, I should say, the various jargon that exists in the world over in terms of new approaches to teaching learning. On that wonderful note, I would leave you with the fact that the child still continues to grow in personality, in values, in many ways than one, although it is an online platform. And I think if there is a will, there is a way. Thank you.
Thank you. What a fantastic journey you've taken us on, Sunita ji. And the amazing amount of work that you are doing at your school has been absolutely fantastic. And I like the way that you talked about how you blended the whole understanding of academia with academics, with the activities, and the various activities that you've taught, and what a great amount of planning that would have taken, the amount of conversations with your teachers that would have taken.
Yes.
I'm sure that it was not something that happened overnight. You must have spent
Exactly.
days and days and probably been working throughout the day, late in the evening, with meetings and so on, because this kind of hand-holding that Sunita ji is talking about can only happen when the vision of the principal is such. And it's remarkable that the kind of work you've done, and I'm sure that the parent community of your school is extremely happy with the kind of work you're doing. So many congratulations for that. And that was a very learning experience for everybody who is listening to you. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
With that,
Dr.
I would like to now there's an interesting topic that I think which all of us would like to hear about, which is the need to revisit the syllabus. And so before I introduce my friend for this particular topic, I think what this whole experience has taught us is that what we actually have been learning is actually useless in many ways. And we have to really relook at the way that we are learning. Because, and again, as I say, this is a great opportunity for us to start looking at how do we really make our children more research-based? How do we in reality ensure that the child finds his own learning from within himself? How does the teacher get away from the usual textbook kind of learning? Because at the end of the day, what is the difference between us and a coaching center? Because if we are only going to transact learning, unlike the kind of learning that Sunita ji has talked about, where you just put in a couple of videos and a couple of PowerPoints, and then you carry on in the same way because you're concerned about, covering the text, except for covering it online. So the point is that how are we going to look at this learning? And everybody is now talking about synchronous learning and asynchronous learning, and talking about the fact that are we going to look at flipped classrooms? Are we going to look at cluster classrooms? Are we going to look at, can we have little groups where learning is going to take place and teachers are going to divide their timetables in a different way? I think for an online class, even the way that we divide our timetable should be very different. And how do we look at it? Because we can't have a regular school where we start at 8 o'clock, start teaching and go on teaching till 1:30. What are the kind of takeaways we're going to have in a school day? How are we going to teach? Somebody just asked a question is, how do you plan to teach mathematics and make it more interesting? Because children are not going to go into laboratories. So how are you going to bring the practicals online? So there's a lot of discussions. I mean, are you going to do it through podcasts? How are you going to teach sustainability? How will you conduct different models? So for something like this, I think it is very important that we have with us a friend, Mr. Shivakumar, the principal of Mysore West Lions Shivaniketan School, who not only is an educator par excellence, he's also very integral member of his Sahodaya, I think he's a secretary, who not only is an educator par excellence, but is also highly committed to ensuring that he runs a great school, and he would be the absolute apt person to be deliberating on this subject of revisiting the syllabi and informing us as to how we take take this way forward. So now I request Mr. Shivakumar to please deliberate on this topic. Mr. Shivakumar.
Thank you, madam. Thank you, madam. Am I audible?
Very audible, sir. Very
Okay,
audible.
fine. Thank you. The revisiting of syllabi, why I took this is because in most of the cases, if you look into the system, our syllabus is a very old. I feel most of the concepts are outdated, which has to be restructured to the current situation. And in the classroom or whatever it may be, we are concentrating more on the content part of the textbook. The content, we are giving more emphasis for content rather than the concept. So children tend to just by heart and write an examination to get marks. But are we really testing what the child has undergone, or what is the experience that the child undergoes and what he is learning? That is the next part of the question that we have to look into it. And therefore I feel that we have to revisit, that is, we have to go back to our syllabus and change a lot of items, especially when it comes to the 10th standard. Most of the social science teachers complain that we are learning many tribe cultures of Europe, but really I feel, do we need that at this point of our? So keeping those things into consideration, I feel that there should be a change of paradigm from content to concept. Concepts have to be very clear. Concepts have to be made firm for the child. Then outline clear-cut learning outcomes. Yes, CBSE has given a learning outcome, but the problem is, first of all, the teachers have to understand what is the learning outcome from an activity. It cannot be given. They have to identify what are the different learning outcomes that I am going to bring out from the child from an activity. And now with this current situation, we are not able to connect with our children. So I feel that teachers can develop a small activity. For example, I can give you an activity where we can take two different size of glasses and fill it with peanuts and give the instruction to the parent, ask their child to count the number of peanuts in the bigger glass and the smaller glass. Indirectly, the child is learning counting, and also he'll try to find out why that occupies more grains are there in the other bigger glass rather than this smaller glass. So a number of enquiry can be done by the child and which can be clarified by the parent himself. Okay, then customize the concept of teaching to local available conditions, because now we don't have a big laboratory. Now we can't bring the children to the laboratory. So we have to utilize, the child has to utilize the available resource at home. So the teacher has to brainstorm herself and prepare the notes or the activity in such a way that the child uses the available resource at home and learns the concepts. Theoretical part should be reduced and practical approach should be increased. Interlinking of chapters and subjects should be there to reduce repetition of concepts. This is a very, very important thing, because in various situations we are not trying to interlink. We teach each subject as a watertight compartment, but now it has to be integrated so that many concepts which are duplicated can be reduced. The reorganization of the textual material. Now the textual material may have a number of chapters in different forms, but we have to reorganize and try to identify which comes in a lateral way, where we can step by step it goes higher. Teachers should explore simplified methods to make children understand the concept and become more independent learners. This is also another important thing which I feel that we are catering, making children just to write an examination, and at the test, at the end of the test, we give him marks and say, fine, you are at this level. But actually the child is not able to apply this knowledge in a another situation. So this has to be taken care. We should make the child more independent, because if this will happen only when the basic education is emphasized. At the lower level, from first standard to fifth standard, I feel that covering of portion is not the criteria, completing of syllabus is not the criteria, but emphasis on basics should be taken care, so that by the time the child comes to sixth standard or fifth standard, automatically the child becomes more independent and he reads by himself, and then it will be easy for us to take the child up. And with this current situation, if we have taken care of all these, surely the child would have become more independent. By giving just one activity, he will continue with the chapters. And at this point, I avoid chapters which have no relevance in the future course of studies. That has to be eliminated. Vocational application, that is, we have to give great emphasis for vocational education, because the present document on the syllabus, present syllabus of 2019 national curriculum, which emphasis on skill development. Now our focus has to be more on developing skills for vocational education and experiential learning, art integration in education, and relevance to the needs of the society. If you look at the needs of the society as well as the child, I have an example. In my class, in my school, there is a child who is studying in 10th standard. He is very weak in mathematics and science, but he is very good at robotics. Today, he plans certain robots for engineering students' projects. And also, he has been invited by Indian Institute of Technology, Chennai, for developing some robotic activity. So, this child actually, at the if not for the COVID, he would have been failed in 9th standard. But he is having such a talent which has to be recognized. So where does our syllabus help him? It is only we look at math, science, social, Kannada, Hindi, or whatever it is. We are looking at only the theoretical part, marks, but these real talents will be identified only when we give proper support for vocational education and integration of subjects. The teachers and the students have to become more independent learners. Assessment, again, when it comes to the assessment part, we are looking at what marks he has scored, but we are not looking at the way, the journey that he has taken while getting these marks. So the child has to enjoy what he is doing. He has to enjoy the learning. This will be catered only through experiential learning. This experiential learning gives the child a different angle of thought. He becomes more logical. For example, a cricket match can be a very good situation for learning physics, mathematics, because the way the bowler bowls the ball, the speed, the velocity, the angular velocity, and the force by which the batsman has to strike the ball to move to the boundary, all these things can be taught in a classroom or through different
Mr. Shiv Kumar, Mr.
Yes,
Shiv
ma'am.
Kumar, sorry to bother you, but could
Yes,
you
ma'am.
give your concluding remarks, sir? Please,
Yes,
your
ma'am.
concluding remarks. Thank you so much.
Finally, the syllabi, I feel that the teaching methodology should totally change, and our syllabus should totally change to the modern demands. Thank you, madam.
Thank you very much for those very interesting examples of real life examples, and speaking about what everybody is hoping that we bring into our classrooms, where even the CBSE is very keen that we look at experiential learning. It's been an integral part from the time of the Kothari Commission, as early as the 60s and 70s, and very integrally mentioned in the National Curriculum Framework. And I think now is the time, because Everywhere we are being told that we can look at topics, and I think it has become so important that for the time being, even if we do not look into grades 9, 10, 11, and 12, except for the other topics, the other syllabus that we have starting from primary, pre-primary, middle school, we can actually, instead of looking at science and mathematics and the social science as in silos, we should actually take up topics and not give it a head that this is science, and integrate it in such a way and ask questions or do research in such a way so that a child is not able to discern whether this is a mathematics or it's a science, but is able to approach it from so many different levels. And that is, I think, what Mr. Shiv Kumar was trying to say, that this whole interdisciplinary approach to learning should not be topic focused, but should be concept focused. So I think this is a brilliant rendering that you've given us of an understanding of how we take this forward and how we move towards a deeper engagement with knowledge and retaining that knowledge by finding it yourself. When the child finds it himself, you'll be able to retain it in a more easier manner. Please come up with questions, because I'm recording the questions and then I'm going to be asking the panelists, your questions. I've already been writing them down. I see many questions coming up. So please keep the questions going and we're going to ask. Thank you again for that wonderful talk that you've just given, Mr. Shiv Kumar. Our next speaker is going to be speaking upon on urban challenges, on the rural-urban challenge that we have. A lot has been spoken about that, and a lot has been said and spoken, and there are articles across the board on it, and it's a world problem. Because if we have the poor in India, we have the American blacks in America, we have in Africa, we have the whole idea of poverty across nations. So I think, and the tragedy is that in spite of the right to education, where we were supposed to be bringing in 25% of children into our classrooms, even today, there are not even 12% of underprivileged children in our classrooms, especially with privileged schools like the CBSE schools. So there's a lot to be said over here, because, I've noticed that the greatest poverty occurs in nations which does not invest in technologies. And I think it's become very important that if we invest in technology, then at least this whole conversation of education 4.0 and 5.0 will at least reach the rural areas. There are questions here which are saying that we only have phones through which we're being able to teach. Some are saying it's so difficult to teachers do not have digital literacy. That's because we do not have the digital highway in our rural areas. We don't have the digital highway in our villages. And so how do you expect a teacher coming from there to have the digital literacy? So I think it is so important now that we start looking at it and asking for it and saying, the way you have given us electricity and roads, please give us this digital space. Because it is as important as that. Otherwise, our entire generation of children will be there without any kind of learning, especially in today's climate. So I think it's become exceptionally important now that we look at how do we look at this whole understanding of the urban-rural divide, the urban-rural abyss, or whatever you'd like to call it, because I've noticed that, children should be a priority, but they've become an afterthought in rural India, which is not really correct. And I think it is tragic that is happening. And it must be remembered that when disasters happen, whether they're earthquakes or whether they are famine or whether they are pandemics like this, everyone gets affected. But it is children from fragile families who get the most traumatized. And how do we look at this? How do we engage with those children? For all these thoughts and more, Ms. Florence Peters, principal of the TR Talent School, Anaparti in Andhra Pradesh, an extremely experienced and conscientious and conscious educator who has a deep understanding of how to deal with this whole urban-rural involvement, is going to tell us something about how to grapple with this issue, because all of us face it at some time or the other. I now leave the floor to Ms. Florence Peters. Florence ji.
Thank you, ma'am, and good day, everybody. As you said, ma'am, we have to face this pandemic planning everything that suits our school, because every school is unique and their demands are definitely not the same. Now it's like children are learning from home. It's school from home. So the challenge is not only for the school leaders and the teachers and the management, but for the parents as well. Now, children do not accept parents as educators. This is what I learned from the past few weeks after giving them some work through phone. There is a big gap between the students and the teachers. In rural areas, especially places where my school and many more schools like ours are situated, parents are not well educated. There is an education and a digital divide. Most of the parents, I think it's more than 50% of the parents, are school dropouts. And the parents who are educated, like up to 10th, who have finished the +2, and some have done their degree, all of them have been educated in their mother tongue, in the local schools or government schools. This makes language a tough challenge for them. So they are not very good in English, which means, again, it's a problem for these parents to help the children with their work. Most of the mothers are homemakers. These parents are there to take care of the children, but when it comes to helping them with the work given by the school or to continue the process of learning, I think they are helpless. Their hands are tied. We feel really, we are very sad to hear when they call us up and tell, ma'am, what shall I do? What can I do? How can I help my child? There is nothing for us to tell them because everything again is connected to language. Whatever we give the children, the instructions or whatever worksheets are being given through WhatsApp. This is the only way which we are left to connect with the kids. As I said, there is a digital divide. Being rural areas or we don't have a digital connectivity like the network, the internet, it's not good in our areas, and most of the parents do not have any sort of these gadgets other than a smartphone. There are parents who still have or still use mobiles with keypads, and these parents find it very difficult to help the children to understand the work that is given. We have to find parents who can volunteer and help these children who are around. Now we also connect to teachers who have turned tutors, and we look for students from the higher classes in this way because most of the children are in a radius from 2 to 10 kilometers. So reaching is possible for us at present. By God's grace, we are not affected by the COVID, but the fear is there. We are all terrified, but still we do take the courage to just visit now and then the homes of children who really need help because it's possible for us. I know this is not possible in the other parts. And coming to the parents, most of the fathers are not available at home. They are busy with their own work. The mothers are not in a position to help their children. So how are we supposed to help them? We have thought it over. We have planned some things for these little kids, mostly up to 5th standard. And because even our teachers do not have a laptop or a net connection at home other than the mobile phone. So what we thought was the best way to approach the parent or the child would be a smartphone. Most of them do have, and the ones those who didn't have, they were just taking the help of their neighbors, relatives, and some good Samaritan would definitely help them out. And it's happening. Children keep going to the neighbor's house, sit in twos or threes, and share. We had pre-recorded classes. Teachers recorded what they were teaching, and when it came to language like Telugu or Hindi and even English, what the teacher did was she gave a voice and it was recorded, the pronunciations, everything. We had a little black chart which we used as a blackboard, had chalk, and then this is what we use as a blackboard, making it just like a classroom and teaching them. And yes, this is only one way. Whatever we have done, we have recorded it and we have given it. And the other thing what we did was we made worksheets. We downloaded some worksheets, we wrote some worksheets, and every exercise were given examples, they were solved, and then they had to do the remaining. Answers were given after a few days for the children to cross-check. In this way, all this work was sent through WhatsApp. And now how about the children having little questions to ask? And it was not possible. So what we did was, we divided the children, like 5 to 10 children, and their phone numbers were given to one particular teacher. And this teacher used to call up these kids and find out how the work was going on, what was the child's difficulty, and then explain to them. I know that this pandemic has hit us very hard, it has caught us unawares, but in places like ours, we just can't shift from the traditional immediately to technology or using these gadgets, because the teachers are learning. Now everyone has understood that using technology is not a choice, but it is the only way. But how effective can this be? This is a question which we still don't have answers. And we are continuing our work, like as some of the panelists shared. It's not only studying or not only giving the content or the textual matter. More than that, the children and as well as we miss that social bonding. So when that was there in the class, the child and the teacher both were happy and the parent had very little to do. But now the parent has a lot to do, and so the teacher also has a lot, because she has to instruct the parent, make the parent understand, and also help the child. This challenge, we are taking it just like one day at a time. Every week it gets better. Every day we are looking forward for a better result, better idea. And I'm very sure that slowly all of us are going to change. We're just going to embrace technology in our own way, in our own little ways. I am not sure that we are just going to go in for online classes, but pre-recorded classes as of now is happening. Worksheets are being given through WhatsApp. And what we have planned is, since we are all in a radius of just 2 to 10 kilometers, we're just 2 to 10 kilometers away from each other, we have planned to give out worksheets, because traditional work is also important, and parents of our areas, they believe that teaching and learning happens only when the written work happens and when it is monitored by the teacher and also assessed by the teacher. So how is this going to happen?
This is
For us,
Florence. Ms. Florence?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Could you do the concluding remarks, because there are lots of questions which are coming up, and I would like you all to also answer the questions.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you very much.
So what we are planning is to have these worksheets distributed by the parents who are volunteers, the non-teaching staff, the teachers who are in the reach of the students, most of the students, weekly. Give it to them, and after it's been completed, to gather them. So in this way, we have found a few ways of which we could continue the process of learning and teaching. So I do not know when this pandemic is going to end, or how it's going to hit us in future. But one thing is for sure, we are changing and we are looking for further reforms in education. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that was one of the finest in all these panel discussions that we've had. I think the sensitivity and the kind of holistic manner in which you explained how we can reach children where there is a rural issue has been done very, very well. And I'm sure that a lot of people who were asking questions, especially about, how do you bridge this rural divide, and the fact that how do we do online teaching in a rural context when we don't have that facility? I think a lot of their questions have been answered by the fact that you've given out phones and you're uploading material and you've created these phone lines and these helplines. So it's been I think it's a great learning for all of us who are connected in some way or the other in helping out children who don't have access to gadgets or have access to bandwidths and so on. So thank you very much for that very interesting discussion that the conversation that you just had. And thank you again for that. Now with that, I think, would you like to do a poll right now, Atya, or should we do the poll right now, or should I carry on with the question?
Abid, are we doing the poll? Are we?
Ma'am, we are having the poll. If you allow us, we can do it right now,
please,
or else.
Please have the poll, so then we can do our questions.
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. So my dear educated, respected educators and all the panelists, we are going to do a quick poll that will be flashed on your screen very soon. And we are going to hold it for another 60 seconds. You can just see the polls right away. I have launched the polls. So I would request you all to please select the most suitable options from all, because this is regarding the training areas that we would like to take up post-pandemic, that is post-COVID-19, and once the schools are open, right? Although all the 4 options are really compatible, but still please use your choicest opinion here and give us the most trending options here. We are holding it for another minute. It is already 30 seconds and we are getting fantabulous responses, ma'am. Also, along with the polls, by the time you all finish up the polls, I would like to bring up to your notice that at the end of the session, we are going to flash the QR codes and we'll be pasting the feedback links so that you can fill up the feedback forms and share your valuable feedbacks and views with us. Almost
There's the poll, yeah.
we have reached to 58%. It's 60 now.
But is it on their screen? I can't see it. Can others
Ma'am,
see it?
it's on the screen, ma'am.
Yes.
It's happening. The people are giving the responses.
It's on the screen.
It's almost 66%. So another minute we are going to hold up.
Another
I
minute?
request
10, 20 seconds.
10 to 15 seconds, ma'am, more. Almost 1 minute, 40 seconds. We are done with it.
Yeah.
So we're going to end the poll.
Show the results.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Great. And I'm going to share the results with you all. You can see the trending topics. The area the question was, in which areas do you feel training will be more necessary post-COVID-19? And the answers, suitable answers which were to be selected were new leadership models, accreditation of online teaching, blended online offline pedagogy, and parent school partnership. So the highest number of votes were given to blended offline pedagogy, that is 58%.
It
And
always comes.
then yes, it always comes first, ma'am. And the next one is parent school partnership is bagging the second poll out of the attendees, that is 35%, and the rest of the bundling up comes to accreditation of online teaching to 21% and new leadership models to 13%.
Now we'll take the questions. Thank you,
So,
everybody, so much.
thank you everybody for participating for the poll. We request Atya ma'am and Amita ma'am to take up the questions now.
Right. So thank you. That was very interesting to see the way that the polls were going. With that, it's interesting how I felt that accreditation is such an important part, because very frankly, at this particular point of time, all of us have just been teaching in our own manner, in whatever we thought best. There is an accreditation for regular teaching that has been going on for school affiliation, or CBSE has done it, but there's no accreditation for the online teaching that we've done. In fact, CBSE is creating a manual, and we're working on it, that there has to be a certain level of standardization where online teaching is concerned. Is it really reaching the children? Is it being done in a proper manner? Is it really replication of the textbook? Is the child learning much more? Because there are so many questions that are coming up. In fact, people from Shanti Niketan have, this is not really a question, but they've said that, instead of schools experimenting on their own, there should be guidelines by the CBSE as to how to go forward with the kind of learning. But let me assure you that the CBSE is going to be informing you of the guidelines along with the NCERT, and they probably will be in the same manner that is being talked about now in this forum. So at the end of the day, they will probably tell you how you should go forward with it. But ultimately, you yourself will have to sit and create those guidelines for yourself and innovate certain methods which probably your teachers would not know. So it's the vision of the principal who will have to take it forward, very much like what Dr. Sunita Rao had mentioned in her discussion. So I would just like to take up a few questions, and I'm going to ask our panelists to do that. Machama has asked how to handle the learning gap and social emotional needs of children. How will they come through online learning? Dr. Sunita Rao, would you like to take this question, Ms. Sunita Rao?
Yes, in fact, one point of reference has been the emotional quotient of the children, because they are missing a lot of normal, in terms of the new normal that we're talking about now, they're missing the regular experiences that they have. And also in terms of being a single child or so, they're secluded at home, just watching a screen now rather than working with a group of children and relating to people, both their own peers and the teacher gently patting them, touching them, and kind of, making them feel comfortable. So this is where we are trying to engage right from the kind of individualized attention is what we are driving at on one hand, and two, we are trying to bring in certain activity mode to kind of break the monotony of teaching every that 10 minutes, 15 minutes, so that the children can engage well, they can feel much more happy and kind of more purposeful too. Otherwise, they feel that I'm just sitting in front of the system. It's like sometimes when we sit in a webinar for hours together and we have to be passive, then what would be our experience? The child should be moved out of it. And we also try to do moodometers with children as to how are you feeling today, and we talk to them. The wellness teachers are also doing a lot of talking with the children and the parents, importantly.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you for that. There is another question that's come up, and I will be requesting, maybe I could request Dr. Sharda to ask this, to answer this question. And it would be, how do you do experiential learning in a virtual school? Dr. Sharda, you'd be absolutely right to answer this.
Thank you. First thing is that when we are
Could you speak a little louder, please, Dr. Sharda?
yeah, I forgot this. Yeah. So when we are asking them for an experiential learning, in fact, we can do it very well online also, because first thing, if we keep the available resources at home, whichever is the class, for toddlers or for first standard or second standard or to 10th standard, we can always give the, recently my students have done to measure the heights and to entirely use the Pythagoras theorem, I think, and they were asked to do it with the available resources, and they have come up beautifully with the measuring the heights and making the entire hypotenuse work, and the projects are already posted into our websites and our Facebook to share it with others. Only thing is that when we are giving them any experiential learning, we should keep the available resources at home, and a little bit of a creative thinking is to be done. For example, if I am asking for a 5th standard or a 4th standard child to learn about longitudes and latitudes, we don't need to tell them bring a ball. You can ask them take a paper and make a ball out of it, crush it, make it look like a ball, then start drawing the lines, and look at a virtual globe and compare it with the ball which you have in your hand, and then you start looking at and you start imitating, you start replicating it. So what happens is the child is first making, then understanding. So it's only that a little bit of creativity is required for experiential learning, and definitely I tell you that even the available onions and potatoes and the papers and the clothes and anything which is there in the house can also make them learn. It's only the creative part of it which works with the children. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that interesting thought. I now request Mr. Shiv Kumar to answer this question if it's possible. I'm sure it is for him. That Mr. K. Raghavacharlu has asked, how is mathematics? How do you teach mathematics? How do you take it up in online learning? Dr. Shiv Kumar, could you answer something? Give us something interesting about mathematics. You had mentioned the cricket and all that, but now on online, how would you take it up? Thank you.
In an online, we can actually give a video. Okay, small video clipping can be given about a particular concept. Can you hear me, ma'am?
Yes, very clearly, sir. Very clearly.
Okay. So based on the audio clipping, certain basic concepts can be questions can be asked, and then slowly it can be elevated. Even an online regular classroom can be conducted by focusing your laptop towards the board, and a teacher can directly write on the board, and all these concepts can be directly seen by the child in a virtual classroom.
Right. Thank you.
A laptop can be focused on the blackboard, ma'am.
Correct. Thank you very much for that. Thank you for that. Ms. Florence Peters, this is again concerning issues about, rural-urban accessibility. So the question has come up from, I hope I'm pronouncing the name, Daita, who says that, what do we do about digital literacy for teachers, especially in rural areas? It's a very big problem. So are there some courses, or how do they go about it? Because you are working in that area. A lot of people in their questions are saying that they also do what you're doing. So Ms. Florence Peters, would you like to give us some thoughts on that?
Yeah, I try my best. When we say teachers from the rural areas, I'm pretty sure that other than a smartphone, maximum of the teachers will not have a laptop or a PC, that's for sure. Now, this is the time for us to, start learning how to access these, or just start learning to use these gadgets. But as of now, I think whatever we could do is only through the smartphone. We have to get in contact with each other, like conference calls, or if possible, since it's the rural areas, the teachers can meet somewhere at the school or at the principal's home or one of the teachers' home where they feel it's safe. And the ones who are good at handling these gadgets can start training the teachers. And now it's a matter of like their jobs, their professions, and then everyone is scared of losing their jobs. Everyone is scared that the same kind of teaching will not continue. So everyone are wanting to learn. So when they have this feeling and when they have this fear that yes, we must, if not, we'll be thrown out, this is the right time to strike. And they will definitely be the computer faculties or teachers who are BTech students who are good in handling this. So what we are doing is, like in our school, we are training our teachers. We are helping out each other. I should say helping out each other. We are sharing the knowledge of using this and how to do classes. Even some teachers have conducted online tests for 8th and 9th graders. We're planning to have it for 6th and 7th also. So
Right.
in this way, I think this would help out. This is the best way that we are using. I think if it suits the person who has asked.
No, I think that's absolutely right, and I also think that the government has taken it upon itself, and the state governments, that they are going to be doing a lot of training across rural India, especially in this whole field of digitalization. And the central government has also said there will be a common platform by which we will learn. And so the question of technology reaching us has become really huge, even in the minds of the government. And there are some very progressive state governments in Tamil Nadu, in Karnataka, in Kerala, and other places where they are looking at this in big ways. And I'm sure that this kind of online training will definitely help, and teachers will be able to leap over this digital divide that they find. There's a question that's come up from, so thank you very much, Ms. Peaches. There's a question that's come up from Meghna Gaur. I think she's on, she writes, my question is regarding language teaching. And can I please have inputs on how to conduct sessions on story, explanation, and grammar, ensuring the activities are for teens who don't like childish worksheets? Would Sunita like to take this on? Sunita, would you like to take this on? Or
Yes,
please, Dr. Sharda, what we can do is
yes,
Dr.
there
Sharda
she
can
is.
start
Dr.
and
Sharda,
Sunita
please
can
take
take on. Yeah. And Dr. Sharda, please intervene after she, because the more the better.
Let's briefly add, we initially thought probably as against the core subject teachers, the language teachers would not be excited about using technology, but then we found they did a lot of homework and research, I must say, to be able to reach out to the children, integrating the storytelling and Janapada and all. I could, the ways they sing it out and create opportunities for children to have a learning experience on one hand, and the way they were also trying to bring in creative writing as on the platform, creating such platforms for children, the language skill, and they were also focusing more on communicative skills, I must say, rather than only on written skills. So learning a new language, say a child who's not learned French at all, learning a few words in French, that also was being introduced towards language development.
Thank you very much. Dr. Sharda, would you like to please give in your inputs?
I just want 2 minutes of all your time, that I will quickly show them how we can do it amongst ourselves. We can demonstrate. For example, we are doing it for a very simple action words and nouns. Okay. And we will start a story, and each one of us will add one line to it. Okay. For example, if I am the teacher, I will start a story saying that once upon a time there was a house, and in the house all the action words and nouns live together. Now I will pass it on to Sunita madam. Now Sunita madam will add one more line. What did the action words and the nouns did together? Now the nouns have used the action words on them. Then Amita madam will say that, yeah, then one of the action words misbehaved with a noun. So what did the noun do to the action word? So we will build one kind of a climax where the whole lot of whatever is the learning outcome and whatever is the gist and the characteristic of a noun and the action word will be finished, and within 15 minutes they will learn the whole thing. And we can make use of the online mode here, asking the children. Now So and so will build the story. Next line will be told by so and so. Next line will be told by so and so. So by the end of 15 minutes, the whole story is done. And we as the teachers will be the ones who are building the bridges in between. Teaching language will be excellent if we are just using this mode, because storytelling as pedagogy is one of my specialty. That's why I pounced into this. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think also the person, the young lady who asked the question, I think she also was talking about senior classes, grades 11 and 12, I think. And I think whatever you're saying, Dr. Sharda, or what even Ms. Sunita Rao mentioned, we can take the same concept up to grades 11 and 12, except you make it a more intellectual exercise when you're dealing with it. And if you're deconstructing the story, it can be done with using real life experiences and having children discussing it. And this is where peer learning comes in. And I think it's very important that we do it. So thank you for those. There's another question that's come up from Lakshmi Prabha. And she says, what is the permissible screen time for children and the teachers as well in the long run, considering this digital learning is going to continue for some more time? So would Ms. Peters like to take on this question? Ms. Florence Peters, would you like to take on this question about what do you think is enough for screen time?
Ma'am, it depends. I think the screen time depends upon the kid. Am I audible, ma'am?
Yes, please. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, parents do keep complaining. I have received many complaints regards the screen time. They said that children would end up wearing spectacles by the time this pandemic ends or the school reopens. So it is a matter of concern, especially when the kids are too young. So if something is very interesting, like if you're doing a rhyme, if the teacher is dancing or singing a rhyme, the child will enjoy it. Or if the teacher is telling a story using all the TLM, definitely the student is going to enjoy it. And he won't, or the parent may not mind the screen time. But if a teacher is going to teach a concept or a subject, and if it's not going to be real, if it's not going to be very interesting or lively, the children will be bored. I think 30 minutes max would be the best screen time, because you can't keep children watching the phone or keep them, let the screen time surpass 30 minutes.
Right.
30 minutes is fine, I guess.
Right. Thank you so much. I'd just like to share with all our friends who are attending this, a FICCI report that had come out the other day, and the minister had also, HRD minister had also gone for this particular conference. And there were these suggestions at different levels of screen time, and I thought I'd share this with you. And they had said that, they divided the learning experience into synchronous, asynchronous, and one-to-one learning. And of course, synchronous learning is in which the groups of students learns and are engaged in learning at the same time with the teachers. And of course, asynchronous is when teachers provide the materials and lectures and tests and assignments, and they can be accessed by students through digital media. And of course, one-to-one is when a teacher sits with small groups of 4 or 5 children and finds out whether they've understood it. So according to this particular report, it says that pre-primary classes should have approximately not more than 1.5 hours a day of synchronous learning, pre-primary, and 1 hour a day of asynchronous, where you send out you download, you upload material, they can do some storytelling. And they said it is very important that the teacher should have a one-to-one contact with small groups of children for at least a minimum of half an hour in a week. And then it went on to classes 1 and 2. I felt 2.5 hours should be of synchronous time, 1 hour of asynchronous time, and again half an hour of conversations, personalized conversations. In classes 3, 4, and 5, they felt 3 hours a day is maximum that they should be having this kind of synchronous time of teaching, 1 hour of asynchronous, doing assignments and so on. And again, they felt that the teacher should connect with the children at least twice in a week. And for classes 6, 7, and 8, they suggested 4 hours of teaching of synchronous, 1.5 hours of asynchronous, and then about half an hour, at least 3 times, twice in a week or 3 times. And for classes 9, 10, 11, and 12, they said there should be 5 hours a day of synchronous, 2 hours a day of asynchronous, and again, conversations with children at least twice or thrice a week in small groups. This is what they felt. And even in the FICCI report, they mentioned that there should not be this issue about not having online classes for pre-primary. Somebody has mentioned that the states have said that, I know Karnataka, Maharashtra has said that there should be no online classes. And I think this is so tragic, because then we'll all be illiterate together. So that even those who have the facility will not have it, those who don't have the facility will not have it. And I think this is where educators must come together and push states and ensure that some kind of learning is happening. Otherwise, as I said to you, we have an entire generation of children who will be illiterate. And this learning gap, which was mentioned by Machama, will be felt maybe not today, but 10 years down the line, and you will have unemployed, what shall I say, people who will just be hanging around illiterate and unemployed. So on that note, I would like now each one of my panelists, and I'm starting with Dr. Shiv Kumar, to please give his closing remarks for this wonderful discussion that has taken place. Mr. Shiv Kumar, would you give your closing remarks, please, sir?
My closing remark is that we should
Your video, would you put on your video, please? We'd like to see.
Yeah.
Put on
Yeah.
your video.
As the demand of the
Please,
day,
your closing remarks.
yeah, as the demand of the day, everybody should move towards technology of one or the other way, and finally try to bridge whatever we have lost for all these days.
Right. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for that. That is very important. Yes. I would now request Dr. Sarda to give her closing remarks.
All I would like to say is that in spite of all the diversity in this whole lot of learning, with the intellectual to IQ to EQ and the financial, economical, all those diversity, if we stay together, if we grow together, if we are ready to grow together, then we will become the most learned society. And if we don't do that because we are causing pain to each other, then there will be a huge setback to the whole society. So let us together hold hands together and grow together so that we will become a better society. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that. I now request Ms. Sunita Rao to give her closing remarks.
Thank you, Dr. Amitaji. I would like to say that one size fits all, that is not true. And therefore, there is no unique online solution that could, or technological driven teaching learning process that can be prescribed for anybody. I think as institutions, let us work towards solutions that reach out to our students and parent community. And I believe collaborating with the parents through a lot of surveys, feedback, talking one-on-one would help us customize the learning solutions, because if the situation continues, we are not offering them a solution just for a day or two. We probably would in the future. And in our school, we're also looking forward to making it much more learner-centric, where we say that many a day, let's run it on an online mode in the future too, and not all the time harp upon the 220 working days of the school. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I now request Ms. Florence Peters to give her closing remarks.
Yeah, I would like to thank Adya ma'am and Team Ratna Sagar. This is a brilliant idea of bringing all the school leaders together. Each one is a warrior. I say this because we are fighting this pandemic and its consequences. Ma'am, Amita ma'am, you just a while ago you said, life is about humanity. I love that sentence. Yes, ma'am. It is first humanity and then education. For us, now it is like we need to help out each other. And if we are safe, and surely if we are together, collaboration and coming together, definitely we will be able to fight this and we come out with beautiful solutions. Each school is unique, each situation is different. There are a lot of takeaways from these webinars which can be tailored, which can be altered and used. So this is wonderful, and I wish all the school leaders a happy schooling to all their children. And here, both parents and teachers are both sides of the coin. It's now no more the responsibility of only the school or the teachers, but also parents. We all have to come together, and teachers have to help out our co-teachers. So all of us as a family, again quoting the words that you have said, life is about humanity, and education is definitely built on the foundation of social and emotional attachment, and all that is related to humanity. That's it.
Thank you. That was wonderfully done. Thank you very much. There are two questions, and I'm going to request Ms. Sunita Rao to answer this. This is from Parimala Deshpande. She's a primary school teacher and she teaches social science for 5th class. And she says, should we read the whole lesson and explain it, or take important information and elaborate using pics and maps?
I think as a social science teacher, it's so important to capture the attention of the children and also make connections to the known, to the unknown. And therefore, translating the language, reading line by line is not going to serve the purpose. You have to make connections to the knowledge that they already have, and also kind of bring in certain discussion forums, bring in points of new learning into their kind of stage. And it's also important to make them research. So you leave a thought with them, and they could go back to the Google. They're already on the online platform. There's no compulsion that we hold on to our textbook and the Word document. Leave them with a leading question and an open question. They are going to do their homework on Google and come back to you. So research mode, discussion mode, participating in a brainstorming session, and making connections. I think that would lead them to have a passion for social science and also relate to daily life in many ways than one.
Thank you so much for that very nice exposition. The last question, of course, is Uday Bhaskar, whose concern is, and I think this is a lot of concerns of a lot of educators and heads of schools, is that, parents are thinking that this online business is only to take the fees. And how do you sort of convince parents, and what do you do, because to make them believe that online is actually very important, learning is very important, and you're not doing it just to get the fees from them. You're doing it because you're concerned for children. And I think it's important then that we have to really have a very strong parent partnership. So with that, I would like to thank again these wonderful panelists, Dr. Sunita Rao, and of course, Sharda, Ms. Florence Peters, and we have Mr. Shiv Kumar. And they said all the same things which resonated so beautifully with us. So let us continue to move from the intimate to the ultimate, from the local to the global, and with an understanding of the three Qs, which is so essential, the three quotients of emotional, social, and adversity, because that's a very important quotient. That are we able to overcome adversity? So the time has now come, as all these wonderful panelists said, let us work together. Let us come together as educators, sharing each other's resources. Because still now, friends, we have been pushed into a crisis. Now is the time for us to heal and to take this whole learning process forward and forget about it. We have to live with what is happening around us. We can't keep speaking about it. There is so much of negativity all the time. We just have to be careful, and we have to start the healing process and the recovery process without falling back on what happened in the last 3 months. So we need to mobilize the entire educational system. So thank you very much. And I would again like to thank Ratna Sagar for having given this wonderful opportunity. It's a shared community of consciousness. Thank you very much for this. And I'm sure that all the attendees will go back with lots of information, with lots of new ideas, and with lots of hope. So thank you again, and thank you all for giving me such a great learning experience, my friends. Thank you. Athiya, would you like to say something, or would?
Yeah, thank you so much, Amita ji. You're just wonderful, wonderful panel, and it's really was an interesting time. We didn't know where 1 hour 40 minutes went. So on behalf of Ratna Sagar, we're taking away great learning from here. It's wonderful, and I think we'll have a QR code at the end where we can share our feedback. Right now, I would ask to Sugat Jain, Mr. Sugat Jain, the MD of Ratna Sagar, to say something. If you'd like to add something, Sugatji.
I would just like to thank Amita ji once again for hosting this wonderful webinar for all the educators and the principals. And definitely our esteemed panel, I think we got to know a lot more, especially the details and the specifics of how they have handled the diverse situations. So right from people who have access to technology to those who don't have access to technology, and how creative teachers can be, especially those who do not have a lot of technology solutions. So I think the details, I mean, we often talk about a lot of these things, but when we hear these details, it really helps all of us. And I hope they have helped everyone who has been listening to all of us today. And definitely, I would like to thank all the educators and principals from AP, Telangana and Karnataka who have joined us today to participate in this, and they have made this very interactive with their questions. Thank you on behalf of Ratna Sagar. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much, Sugat, for giving us this great opportunity. Thank you, Athiya. Thank
Some
you
very
so much.
wonderful and relevant questions so could not be answered because of the time. So
Yes.
we've noted those questions. All the questions from chat has been downloaded, and we'll definitely get back on the answers.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much, everybody.
I would request Abid Ansari.
Thank you, ma'am.
Code.
I'm here, ma'am. Thank you very much for such wonderful inputs, ma'am. Here is the QR code, my dear educators and panelists. The QR code is on the screen. So with any scanner on your phone, you can just scan the QR code. We are holding it for another 40 seconds so that you can...
1 minute.
1 minute, yes, ma'am, as you say. 1 minute we are holding it for, and the feedback form link will be shared in the chat boxes. From there you can do and fill the feedback forms, put up your valuable inputs for us. It's in the chat boxes. Sahil, can you please do the favor? Because I'm holding the QR code over here.
Yes, Abid, it is posted in the chat room.
Great. Thank you. I'm holding the QR code, so I cannot post the theme in the chat box.
I understand.
Yeah.
So we'll put other questions from Facebook.
Thank you.
Too.
So now we are removing the QR code from the screen. Thank you very much. Hope everyone, ma'am, Athiya, ma'am, over to you, ma'am.
Have a good evening and a good weekend. Stay safe, keep safe. Let's move together, Sharda ma'am said. We'll move together and we'll win this one too. Sare jahan se acha Hindustan hamara. Thank you.
Absolutely, ma'am. Absolutely, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
And
thank you so much.
Once again, thanks all the educators. Like we say it always with Ratna Sagar, education is our mission. And at the end, we will just bundle and sum it up that as doctors are saving lives, we educators are shaping lives. With this, I conclude with this webinar. Thank you very much. Take care, stay safe, stay home.
Thank you.
Ma'am, with your permission.
Yeah, please.
Should we end this?
Yeah, you can close the, yeah. Yes.
Sahil, the Facebook Live.
Yeah, we can.
I'm ending it from here. Yeah.